Welcome to the Reschool'd Podcast, the show that discusses all the things that schools may have missed, with your hosts, AJ Kuti and Jason Gordon. Welcome to the very first, the inaugural, the introduction episode of the Reschool'd Podcast. I'm AJ Kuti. I'm one half of the hosting duo around here, and I'm super excited to introduce my co-host, Jason Gordon. Jason, how you doing?
Doing great, AJ. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here as well. Can't wait to get started talking to the folks about the stuff that we got for them.
Oh, I'm stoked. And just to kind of give you a heads up on what is on today's episode, since this is our first one, we're just going to keep things kind of lighthearted and fun around here. So it's just going to be us talking about who we are, what we hope to accomplish, and why we started the Reschool'd Podcast. But before we get into that, be sure to follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at Reschool'd Pod. If you like what you hear and you want to hear more, be sure to hit the follow button on the podcast app and check out our website, reschool'd.com. If you have any questions you'd like answered on the show, please feel free to send it to us. We'd love to help.
Absolutely.
Jason, did you have anything that you want to talk about before we get into the main stuff?
No, I just want to reiterate, we have a whole lineup of questions, things that we're going to address about college, getting ready for college, is college right for you, things like that, things that you weren't told ahead of time. But the things that you are curious about, make sure we know it, okay? Those are the things that we want to address, the things that matter most to you. May not be a whole episode dedicated to it, or it may be multiple episodes dedicated to it. But regardless, if you get your questions to us, we're gonna answer them. We're gonna address them.
Yeah, and I think I kind of piggybacking on what you were just saying. It's important for us to point out that this show is for our listeners. This is specifically for our listeners. This is stuff that we've noticed in our classes that we feel would help students coming into college and leaving college, going into the work field. So it's just nothing about us. This is just really about you. So the more feedback we can get, the more questions that we can get, the more we can help you. So I think that's a great point. So let's get into the main topics today. Normally we would start off with our quick question, but since this is our first show, let's just go ahead and get into the main topics, and as just introducing ourselves and kind of who the podcasts are or what the podcast is about and everything. So Jason, who is Jason Gordon?
Well, I guess most importantly, I'm first off a college professor. That's my primary profession. I teach legal studies and business management courses, but I'm first generation to college. I've been doing this now for about 8 years, and part of my responsibilities are to instruct students on career readiness and professionalism. And much of what I'll talk about here has come up over the years in my mentoring, advising, teaching students on these types of topics. And there was so much of that material, so much of that information that was so relevant. So anyway, that's my primary motivation behind this. Degree-wise, I am a lawyer, but I have a business degree as well and a transactional law degree. So I come at this not primarily as a researcher, but more as a practitioner of professional practice. And so much of this about college readiness and how to prepare, and these questions are near and dear to my heart, being first generation.
Well, that's really cool. Yeah, my name is AJ Kuti. I've had this idea for the longest to create a podcast that helps students succeed in college and in career outside of academia. I'm a little different because I teach accounting in college, so mine doesn't have a direct correlation with the subjects that we're going to be teaching or the topics we're going to be talking about here on this podcast. But I feel like these topics are so important, and the more and more I talk to students, I kind of almost feel like they just have been not talked about in schools, whether it be in high school or college. And I really feel like these are the things that's going to set you apart from the academic side of what you learn in school. These are those undertones that really need to be talked about and discussed that really aren't being discussed right now. And these are things that I feel like will help you further in the long run of whatever your future may hold. I love this kind of stuff. And granted too, if you will quickly learn this about me on the podcast, is I have ADD like crazy. And so I tend to struggle with my way of learning things. And these are also things that help me get through college and help me get through the work field. Battling that. That's kind of why I wanted to start this. And that's why it's so important to me. I love talking about this stuff.
Yeah, like I said, we're both excited. We're both happy to do this. So once again, we are here for you guys. So the things that we're going to talk about, they're going to be relevant most of the time. Hopefully, like I said, you'll give us more content to talk about with your questions, with your input. And hopefully at some point in the future, if you like what we're doing here, maybe you'll be a guest on our podcast.
That would be awesome. what are some things that you hope to accomplish with this? Like what's one goal with this podcast you'd like to accomplish?
Well, I always look at everything when it comes to career development as a game, right? Some people have extensive advantage because they know the rules to the game better than others, or they have some advantage by virtue of connections or networking contacts, that type of thing, above others. So what I hope to do here is just to lay out some of the rules for people, things that people may not readily understand, so that they can get the most out of what they desire in terms of their learning, in terms of their professional career. So if I can help in that way, just by getting the information out there, by leveling the playing field a bit, that's the best I can do.
Yeah, and I think when you said that about the game, that really struck a chord to me, because I'm a firm believer in strategy and preparing yourself in a way that's going to propel yourself in the future using that strategy. So it is the exact thing of what that cliche that you hear of work smarter, not harder. That's me to a T. And so I feel like if we can give the listeners these strategic advantages of moving forward and how they can use strategy to almost overcome their deficiencies, whatever their deficiencies are, I feel like it's going to help them even more in their college career and their professional career.
Without a doubt. As that old Shakespearean quotation is, a paraphrase of it, a smart person learns from their mistakes. A really smart person learns from the mistakes of others. I made quite a few mistakes along the way. I hope to talk about them. I hope to make them into learning points for anybody who wants to hear them.
Yeah, and I think that's the cool dynamic between you and I, is that I am an open book. I have no problem talking about anything, talking about my experiences, past or present, my failures, my successes, and all of that, because I feel like that's a learning tool for others too. So it's not just a learning tool for me, but for you as well. So I'm an open book, and so I have no problem talking about whatever the listeners would like to hear and need help with.
Well, good. Well, that being said, do you want to stop talking about ourselves and jump into the next episode so we can start providing some valuable information to these folks?
Well, I don't know. I kind of like talking about myself. I do that a lot, but I guess we can. Well, that's cool. That's a great time to end it then. That'll do it for today's episode. Jason, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I hope the listeners enjoyed it as much as we did.
Absolutely. Can't wait to jump into the next one.
Yeah, our next one is actually going to be really interesting because it's our first episode of the first series. And by the way, we are going to be setting these up in series, so that way you can kind of pick and choose kind of where you're at. So they're going to be helpful for all, but there's some of these topics are going to be more helpful depending on where you are in your life. So maybe you're a high school going into college, or maybe you're in college currently. You're just starting out, or maybe you're at the tail end. So we're going to break these into series. And so we're going to be starting with our first series in the next episode. So I'm super excited. Jason, you got anything to say before we go?
Appreciate it, everybody. Tune in, check out some of our series. You're going to enjoy it.
Awesome. Y'all have a good one. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Reschool'd Podcast. Be sure to head over to reschool'd.com for news and other information on things we're getting into.